Welcome to the Break Room, the show from GriffinWink Advertising, where we take a little time out of our day after lunch every other Wednesday and just talk about stuff, just talk about random stuff, mostly random stuff. But sometimes, it's about the advertising industry or promotions or, all the stuff that we do that would actually make a live stream with all of us interesting. And the interesting people we have with us here today, Trace Thomas, Brian Wink, Summerhill. How y'all doing?
Awesome.
Great.
Good.
Ready to talk about stuff.
Stuff and things. I
think we should talk about some things too, maybe.
Some stuff and then maybe some things.
Sprinkle some things on top of the stuff.
This is phenomenal content, guys. This is a great start. This is fantastic. Well, it's because we're all still sleepy from the turkey and the stuffing and the mashed potatoes. So hope everybody out there had a great Thanksgiving. Everyone traveled safe. Everyone is healthy. Summer's rocking the fall colors and a new pair of glasses that I don't think we've ever seen before. So
what?
Yeah, they're like, are those new or are they just?
Nope, they're just new to you.
So. I love it. Well, today is a very special day where after Thanksgiving every year we get to give thanks for music. It is Spotify Wrapped time, and this was brought up because I think among us this might be one of our favorite audience engagement campaigns from like a promotional brand perspective. Like ever. Like it's one of mine. It is absolutely Spotify Wrapped is my favorite audience engagement tactic that like any brand uses. It's really cool. So we're gonna kind of chat about that and maybe share a little insights into our hearts through the songs that we listen to. But what do y'all? And this baffled me. But Trace still does not have Spotify.
Yeah, I used to have Spotify. To be fair. And then I switched over to Tidal for a little while because it pays the artist better.
Yeah.
I'm a good person, caring about the arts.
Now we all feel terrible.
But then during the pandemic, I decided that I might need to cut back on some streaming services, save a little money. And I kind of looked at what I use the least. And honestly, I listen to music, but not as often as I do like pretty much everything else. I've really gotten way more into podcasts over the last few years. So
where do you get your podcast from?
Apple. I use the Apple one.
So fair enough.
Yeah. So I just got rid of Tidal as well. And I'll still put on Spotify or Pandora every once in a while, but
the free version.
Yeah. I typically just go to YouTube and actually just Google the song or something these days if I'm going to listen to something. But I have nothing against it, and I'm constantly I need to probably pay $10 a month again for one of these services.
Just get back into it.
I have the free version of Spotify.
You still just have the free version?
I do.
Well, yeah. I think it's interesting because I pay for the premium version and split it with a few family members. But I think it's interesting. It takes the ads away from obviously your listening, but podcasts still have ads in them because they're built into the podcast themselves. So it's like a whole different thing. I think that's very interesting how even with the premium subscription, the broadcast format, the broadcast format content still has ads in it because that's really the only way that I think it works because podcasts have kind of always been free, right? Like they're even on, but before real Spotify and Pandora, and they were just kind of on Apple, and Apple was the main streaming service that streamed them. Did you have to pay for them? I don't remember. I don't think I was listening.
Now there's Patreons and subscription-based ones now.
And you get
but even a lot of those still have ads. People are just, trying to make as much money, which they should. If they can get people to pay them for their work, then they should definitely do that. But
see, that's the thing about podcasts that drive me insane is the ads, which is crazy because we're in the advertising business. But the ads that they put in their podcast are 5-minute long ads. They're ridiculously long.
They are very long.
I would rather have the way Spotify does it, where it's a couple really short ads and then you're back to your music kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But when they do, when I listen to Smartless, they have 3-minute blocks of ads, and it's really like two companies, but they just talk forever. And I'm like,
yeah, but that's also because they're like,
you're getting paid.
They're like improving and yes-anding and all that, because it's them. Like there's kind of two kinds of podcast ads. There's the ad that you just insert that's made by someone else, and then there's the ad that you just have the host read and ad lib on top of. And that's I think like Conan O'Brien does that. The Smartless guys do it. Mike Birbiglia does it. Like it's, you know, I'd say that is it's almost becomes a little more acceptable at that point, because it's still those hosts and that banter that maybe you're willing to listen through the ad because you value the banter or the, you know, what the hosts have to say. I don't know.
I'm hitting that fast forward button as fast as I can on those ads.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of Ringer podcasts, which is actually owned by Spotify. So I guess you could say I do use Spotify just through their third-party thing that they own. But I don't think their ads are as bad, because they're usually like a minute and a half.
Yeah.
And so it's like hitting that button like 3 times and you're through it.
It reminds me so much of like the old radio style, where it's like 5-minute breaks and you're just like, change the dial. My gosh.
It's like 12 minutes of music and 20 minutes of ads between the 12 minutes of music. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a sales manager one time that he said, you know, the great thing about news is that we control, it's the only thing from the national broadcast that we control the formatting of. And he goes, I would rather have that thing full of commercials and sprinkle in a piece of news every now and then. And I'm going, no, but
that's so
then you would lose
school.
Your ratings and everything else. But
that's like such an old school thought. Yeah, that's interesting. But
he's the same one that took a 30-minute break and did nothing but commercials throughout that whole 30-minute break.
Wow.
It was a money grab.
No, thank you. Well, then that's like the advent of streaming services is due, I think, a lot to that mentality and people wanting to change that and wanting to have more control over what they listen to. So, and Spotify, Apple, all these major streaming services have given that to people. And then, you know, that Spotify, it was a few years ago. I mean, they've been doing it a while now, but at the end of every year, for anybody that doesn't have Spotify or doesn't know what Spotify Wrapped is, it's at the end of every year. They piece together, or an algorithm pieces together for you, basically a little short video, a series of Instagram story style panels that tell you what your favorite music was. What did you listen to the most? What podcast did you binge the most? What were your top artists? How many minutes did you listen? What genres were your top genres? And people absolutely eat it up. There's not a single person. There's like, if I went onto Instagram right now, or I did this over lunch, went onto Instagram, I would say like maybe 1 out of every 5 stories at the moment don't have like a Spotify Wrapped section where people are going in and sharing their Spotify Wrapped data to their Instagram stories and tagging the artists, and then the artists, you know, share those stories to theirs. And it's just this crazy, really cool way to engage with the audience and the artists that Spotify has been doing for a while now. But what Brian and Summer, we kind of talked about, you know, Trace doesn't necessarily have it anymore, but what role does either Spotify or just streaming services in general play kind of in your day-to-day life?
Go ahead, Summer.
For me, it's an everyday, almost all day thing. I mean, it's my alarm when I wake up. And then, you know, when I start the day, I'm always listening to something in the background, whether it's music or a podcast. I mean, I have an insane amount of minutes listened to.
Have you looked at yours yet?
I did over lunch.
What was your amount of, or what was, did it tell you?
Yeah, well, I was like around 22,000 minutes.
God.
But I mean, it's so easy though for me to just kind of get in the zone and just have something going on in the background, just have music playing in the background. It works for me. I'm super productive that way.
Yeah.
Chelsea's the same way. She's got to have either a podcast playing, or her favorite thing to do is to take a Netflix movie and play it, one that she's seen several times, and minimize it, play it in the background while she does her work. But she says it helps her concentrate.
It just takes all the rest of the noise out and just focuses you. Yeah. Yeah. What was something Spotify did new this year which they try and throw some new gimmicky thing in every year, but they did auras, which is the music you listen to. They chose an aura for you, which was denoted by a color swatch as well as a just a mood. So mine, it was actually very interesting. I was talking to Brian and y'all right before we jumped on here, but I think like I must be like growing and maturing and getting older or something, because I think for the first time in the history of me having Spotify, like metalcore and heavy metal was not the top genre on my Spotify, and my aura.
Infants will change that
Yeah,
genre.
Having
little
little
kids.
kids.
A dad now.
I know.
You can't be playing the yelling stuff.
They have little baby earmuffs. It's totally fine. But yeah, so this is mine. If you're listening to this on podcast, you won't see, but it's this wonderful bluish green color, and it says your top music moods are cozy and happy. And I went, that's not right. And then I clicked through, and yeah, sure enough, like my top genres were like EDM and like acoustic folk and like soft funk. And so I was like, holy cow, that's very different than it used to be.
Yeah, mine was bold and happy.
I think you're bold and happy. I'll give you bold and happy.
I'm very usually bold with my happiness.
And you're bold regardless of being happy.
I don't.
That's bald.
And mine. I really don't. It's wistful and confident.
Wistful and what does wistful even mean? Like, hold on, I'm Googling wistful.
With wistful, I think of something like skipping through a field of daisies in the middle of a forest.
To be fair, one of my top genres was like indie folk, so probably not too far.
That's a good one.
So
your name's also Summer Hill, which I think of as wistful being on a hill.
No, I say this all the time to everyone that I meet. I'm like, first of all, shout out to my parents. Don't know what you guys were thinking. Was born in the middle of November. Blame that. But how was
wistful
that really going to turn out? You know what I mean?
Thinking.
Like there are like a small number of options in terms of how my personality was going to be, and I still to this day will never forget. I had a high school math teacher who signed in my yearbook that I was his favorite tree hugging, kayak toting, Democrat voting hippie. Which was just hilarious. And I'm just, I guess I could.
Okay. Well, guys, wistful. I looked it up and I don't think he means what you think it means. Name that movie. But wistful, according to the dictionary, is having or showing a feeling of vague or regretful longing.
Whoa.
That's not what we thought of it.
Explain yourself, Summer.
Like I said, one of my top genres, indie folk. So it makes total sense.
Yeah. I mean, like indie folk, if you're listening to like Ben Howard or Gregory Alan Isakov, like that's totally what it is. Yep. Like that's funny. There we go. So they have wistful, and what was your second one? Wistful confidence. How do you have vague and regretful longing and then confidence?
I'm telling you, I'm on.
Who are you?
She's vaguely
confident about her longing.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Trace, what do you think your aura would be?
Yeah, I think I know exactly what it would be. It would be a royal purple,
regal.
And it would be like powerful. Wise. And all-knowing and beautiful. I would have multiple words to describe it. So
yeah, Spotify only gave everybody else 2 words, but Trace, it would give like a paragraph.
2 words can encompass all the complexity going on with this.
So, and because you don't have Spotify, you get to decide that for yourself. You get to proclaim it. You don't need a streaming service to tell you what your aura is. That's very regal of you. That's very purple of you.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. But Summer, what was your top artist?
Top artist. Let's see here.
And Brian, I know yours was skewed because your 10-year-old son listened to it half the time anyways also.
Yeah, which I need to reconsider that based off of what I'm seeing on here.
Yeah.
So according to Go ahead. I'll let you go, Brian.
No, go for it.
So apparently I listened to 1,675 different artists.
What?
Wow.
Holy cow.
Apparently.
I need to be doing more Spotifying.
Which it blows my mind because I just feel like I'm like, no way, it's not humanly possible. But apparently Novo Amor was my top artist for the year.
Oh, that's very wistful.
Very. Dermot Kennedy. And then go figure, Prof, who is a rapper out of Minneapolis, was in my top 5.
I love it.
So, and then also another rapper named Slat Zai out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. So
wow.
I think Spotify really got me on this one. They're really like pretty accurate.
They're like, explain
wow,
yourself.
I just did not see rap music being Summer's go-to.
Okay, but it wasn't like mainstream rap music. Like it was like indie rap where she had to clarify where the person was from because that's her vibe. Like it's a good vibe. It's like it's rap.
Like, yeah, I guess, and that makes sense. I guess I'm into.
Do you when you're talking to people about us, do you be like, oh, that's Brian Wink from Amarillo, Texas?
We each get a clarification.
Yeah, that's Kevin Wade from Albuquerque.
From Albuquerque.
Trace, formerly from Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Formerly of OKC.
Location unknown.
Oh man, Brian, who were your top artists?
Well, okay, so here's what I have a question for you guys because you guys seem to be much more well versed in the music scene than I am. I don't understand a couple of these genres. My number 1 genre was modern rock.
Okay.
My number 2 is classic rock.
That's
I get
fine.
that. But number 3, I don't even know what kind of genre this is. Gauze pop. I mean, is that like you listen to this when you have like dental work done?
I've never even heard of that. Well, I've already got Google up for wistful. Let's do gauze pop.
And then number 4 was country road. I don't even like country music. I never even listened to it.
So apparently gauze pop is according to, it was a genre that Spotify created.
Like invented?
Back
in so they get to create their own things now.
Yeah. So, and they're saying it's a subtly distinct cluster of indie pop.
There you go. There you go.
Okay. That makes sense.
I don't know where that gets from.
But like, how much you want to bet gauze pop is one of the most searched terms today?
I know, right?
On Google.
Well,
I'm looking at the trend data because I have this little plugin and it's flatline, December of 21, bing, just straight up.
And these are the same people trying to search out what ecto folk and freak folk are, which is apparently 2 of the other Spotify defined genres. Wow. Wow, Spotify.
So to answer your question, Kevin, my top artists were Glass Animals.
Yeah.
Skillet, which is one that my son listens to a lot, and Imagine Dragons, which he listens to a lot as well. We both listen to that one, but he's a drummer and he plays the Imagine Dragons music. And then my number 4, this one's right up my alley, Ninjago Music.
Okay.
So, and then number 5 is The Score.
Dave Matthews isn't even on there?
I know, right? Like that doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Isaac just totally like dive bombed your entire Spotify year. Like he just took all of the top spots.
You're letting Dave down.
Here's my top songs. Tell me if any of these songs sound like me. Montero by Lil Nas X. Legend by The Score. That one's probably me. Shockwave by Marshmello. Realm Overworld from The Legend of Zelda, and Happy from Despicable Me 2.
Don't try and pass this all off on Isaac. Those are all you. This is all you. You're just coming here on public record to say
no. And here's the thing, and Kevin, you know me better, but the artist I binge listened to the most was Dumpsta Funk.
Yeah, that's you though. Like that's got to be you.
No, that one's me, but literally, you told me about Dumpsta Funk one day and I binged them for like a day and a half. and they're the number one binged listener artist that I listen to.
I thought that was an interesting stat. So we talked about how Spotify adds stats, and I think this one was actually, along with kind of the aura, was actually a very interesting addition to try and get people to kind of emotionalize what they were presenting, because the whole idea of the Spotify kind of year in review thing was to try and get people making those emotional connections after the fact to the music that they were listening to, because that for them is a very powerful branding move, tying, which everybody always does. You only ever listen to music that matches an emotion that you're feeling, but nobody thinks about that until Spotify tells you, hey, you binged this one band, and you immediately think back to the time in the year that you binged them and why. Like, Brian, we were trying to figure out why like your top binged artist was who they were, and you said, and I said, well, binge just means who did you listen? The canons. It's who did you listen to the most in one sitting? And you're like, oh, well, that was that night that Chelsea and I, put Isaac to bed, got a glass of wine, and just went out on the porch and talked for hours. That's a valuable memory that was brought back via the music that you listened to. And so you then, like, Spotify, through that binge stat, is instantly trying to, again, resurrect these memories, which I think is very interesting. Like, when I think I put this in the chat while we were talking about this episode, but when last year, when they did the decade in review, and you looked at your entire decade as far as music, my number one artist and the top songs from that artist encompassed within those top 5 songs from the number one artist was the song that Rebecca and I danced to at our wedding, the song we first held hands to, the song that walked us down the aisle. And like it got me like tearing up, and I had not made this connection that this artist was so important to both of us, like throughout the course of like the last 4 or 5 years. And it was just like a huge like emotional gut punch. And I was like, thank you, Spotify, for these memories, which is like such a weird thought when you just like step back and look at a giant brand taking all of your user data and then spitting it back at you. When Facebook and Google do stuff like that, we get pissed. But when Spotify takes that data and instead of remarketing things to you, or instead of trying to, like curate your experience through an algorithm, Spotify takes your user data and it presents you your own emotions bare and laid out for you to see, and everybody eats it up. And you don't have people complaining about Spotify's, like the amount of information that Spotify must have on us. Why are they tracking this all? Why are they all feeding back at us? And I think it's because of the tact that they've shown in building this out to serve that purpose of like remembrance and emotion.
I agree. I think part of the reason that we're much more open to Spotify doing this is it seems to track our usage, but it doesn't seem to track our behaviors outside of the usage of the music.
Yeah, because the only way they use it is to then feed stuff from within the platform back to you, not necessarily.
Right. Now, like if I start getting ads from like the Canons to buy their merch and stuff like that, okay, now I'm going to be mad. But I really think that, Spotify uses this information in a way that, or they repackage it and give it back to us in a way that we're not as upset because we're more emotionally tied to it. It's raw, like you were saying, it's our raw selves, because with social media, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever, that's all show. That's not really raw. Like that's the persona you want to put out to the world. Spotify is taking all of that and saying, this is who your persona is to you. And you're going, wow, like that's pretty dead on. Like Summer was just saying a few minutes ago, like that's very uniquely her. And I think that's why people get so excited about it, is because it's really the only raw usage of information that makes us feel actually comfortable.
I have to, if Spotify forces me to accept in my heart that I am no longer an angsty, rebellious metalhead. And it doesn't show you, it didn't show me what I wanted to see, but it showed me what I needed to see. It said, grow up, Kevin.
It's time.
Well,
I believe I've been saying that for several years.
But like other streaming services that aren't just music, but even Netflix, they do this. They're like, oh, you like these kind of movies? Well, here's this one we think you'll like too. And so, I mean, the recommendations, the building it, like Spotify builds the playlist, which back when I used to have it, like that was awesome because like not only were you
Discover
listening
playlist,
to artists you like, they would show you other similar artists, and that's how you could find new, like just the way they tailor it to like, hey, this is your vibe, and just like build upon it instead of like, I don't know, again, try to manipulate or.
Yeah. But I mean, like these streaming service algorithms, they all kind of do that. They've all developed some sort of like, you will like this because of this. And that's not new, but the way that Spotify has said, no, we're going to use this to create like not only audience engagement for how they use the platform, but we're going to create a separate audience engagement piece that is meant to be shareable and social as much as it is like introspective and emotional. And so I think that they very much have capitalized with the Spotify the Spotify year in review stuff, and I think it's really cool. Can y'all think of?
I like the way that they kind of shift the focus a little bit too, because they're like, yeah, we have all this big data on you, but nobody thinks about how they use that to serve ads as well. If you're listening to the free one,
on the free version or whatnot,
like I am. If I pay for it, then Spotify's like, whatever, we'll just play you the
you're
music
paying
you
us
want to listen
directly.
to.
It's fine. Yeah.
Right. But if you're not paying us directly, then we're going to use your data to put advertising in that will be usable for you, that makes sense for you. Just like who was I talking to the other day? We got into, I was talking to Chelsea's cousin, who is communications person at Walmart, and we were talking about the tracking of the apps and the third-party tracking and all that stuff, and I made the comment, I was like, you just need to allow it all. And they're like, what? Why would you allow them to track you? And I'm like, otherwise you're going to be getting ads for diapers, and you're
still going to get ads
diapers.
Whether you're letting them track you or not. It's, do you want the ads that might actually be relevant?
Exactly. And so it was an interesting conversation, but people are always like, well, you want to be able to track us so that you can target us with ads. Yeah, you're right. I do, because I want to put my client in front of the people who are in the best position to need their services or want their product, and not just have to do a crapshoot like the old days of television where you just broadcast it out to everybody in the broadcast area and hope that one or two of them like it.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, soapbox. I'm off. I'm done.
No, that's a great point. And that's it. It relates to all this other stuff that we always talk about. I feel like on the break room and even on our other podcast, Life of the Brand, we always talk about, privacy and targeting and how that affects the way we live our own lives, but also place ads for clients. But Spotify is still part of the conversation because past, them using your data to just, feed yourself back to you, which seems very, just very empathetic and kind of harmless and very fun. They're still using your data if you have the free version, just like they would do on Pandora. They are still using that data to target ads to you. So they are not, I guess, immune to this larger conversation of data gathering and privacy. But I do think that, whereas if we talk about, like redirects, right? We talked a bunch about the Meta announcement, Facebook becoming Meta, and how it all seemed like it was this massive, clunky redirect, that very surface level redirect away from the issues Facebook is facing. Whereas this feels like what Spotify does feels much less like a redirect and more just part of their brand that makes people want to listen more. And so I think there's kind of a very key distinction there, because Facebook for a while, and they probably still do, I don't know, they tried to do the whole, like, this was your year, and they pulled photos and pulled posts and stuff like that. But I just don't think it's as well received or even as highly shared or as well curated as the Spotify year in review.
I think it used to be pretty widely shared when they first started doing it.
Yeah.
But now if they did it, it'd just be like,
people would be like, okay, we
people
get
are
it.
posting, it's like, here's a QAnon theory, like post, and here's a political ad that someone shared, and it's just gotten so like clunky in there that I don't even know.
You
I wish,
use
like,
the
I
word
rarely
vaccine
see photos of
470 times.
yeah, like how often do you see photos of people with their kids or anything? Like it's just not as
Anymore
common
on
there.
Facebook, yeah.
So it's kind of a weird. But that made me think like why. I was just thinking while we were talking like why aren't more companies doing a similar type thing? Like even Netflix or other streaming things, could they do like a hey, this is what you've watched this year?
And
like,
package it up in a really
know
fun,
that they
empathetic
binge
way.
watched like Love Island for like 50 hours. I don't think
Yeah.
anybody wants that.
Or they could do like for Netflix, they could probably only do like content that they've created. But like
Oh
they could
yeah.
just do like a little mini trailer maybe and like put some scenes of like, hey, this is what you watched this year, and it's like a shot of, like Army of the Dead and a shot of
But
Squid Game.
you run into a big problem there, and that is the ability to view it in an acceptable way. Like Summer said, she turns her music on in the morning and listens to it all day, and that's why she has 22,000 hours of streaming music. That's acceptable. Now, if you went on and shared on Facebook, well, it's more acceptable than if you went on Facebook,
or it's at least
and
understandable.
said, I streamed 22,000 hours of movies. People are going to go, whoa,
Ooh,
wow.
Yeah.
And so I think it really depends on the streaming platform or whatnot, but it's also, you don't want people to look at it and go, whew, I watch too much TV.
You don't want it to be, because that's the key thing with Spotify is like they want it to be very much like you look back on those times listening to music fondly. Whereas I'm not sure if you like it's the idea that music and movies can both be an escape, but music can also be very much ingrained in what you're doing. It's more of a soundtrack than an escape in a lot of senses. Whereas movies, you pretty much, if you were to look back on what you watched and how much you watched, you'd pretty much have to admit to yourself that the time spent here was primarily to escape. Right. And there may not be parts of yourself that you want to think back on as well, fondly. Whereas with music, I'd say for the most part, if you're listening to that music, it does create, just emotional connection more fondly than, oh, I just listened to this because I was trying to like escape a bad day. You're like, no, I listened to this because it helped me through the bad day, sort of thing. So it's like a medium thing, as much as it would be difficult to actually present in any sort of acceptable way. So it is very unique. But yeah, I think there's definitely ways that each of these services can create connection with their audiences and their users. Just a lot of people, for some reason, it seems to fall flat, and I think Spotify is one that doesn't.
And just to clarify, minutes, 22,000 minutes. And let me just say,
not hours.
We have a teammate who posted their screenshot of theirs, and they listened to 27,000 minutes.
Whoa.
So I'm not alone in this whole music situation.
Do we get to guess who it is?
Oh, I can tell you who it is.
It's one of the Chelseas.
No.
Not?
No, it's
Eric.
It's the gentleman whose previous career was running the #1 EDM music blog site in the world.
All right, fair enough. But no, Eric's too busy with all of his other hobbies to focus on. Well, he probably listens to music throughout all of that. Whenever anybody says anything like new, I immediately think that can't be to Eric, because Eric does too much. He's already cloned himself 3 times anyways. So yeah. He didn't have time to listen to 27,000 minutes of music. But then you get the idea that it's just
he didn't have time to pay attention to 27,000 minutes worth of music.
Yeah.
So, but EDM music's one of those that's really easy to play in the background because it's not distracting.
Well, an EDM artist was my number 2 artist. Like for the first time, like ever, it was my top 3 artists are basically a funk artist, an EDM artist, and a folk indie artist. So like 3 genres that are very easy to just like, it sets a mood, and then it allows it's just a soundtrack at that point. And so, yeah, like I get that.
Was there anything in here that was surprising to you, that was like a aha wake up moment for you, other than you're no longer a metalhead and you're dad?
I don't know about mine. Let me go back through. The aura was a little goofy to me. The cozy and
I
happy.
feel like you should have more coffee house in yours.
Yeah, I mean, I had I Ben Rector was my number 5 artist, so he's kind of like, like feel good pop rock coffee house. Need to Breathe is up there, so they're kind of.
I could totally see Kevin being that guy that goes to the coffee shop and sits there with his computer and then listens to absolute hard metal throughout the whole
100%.
visit.
Yeah, nobody ever knows. Like the vibe is so chill, and then inside of me is just turmoil and angst. But not this year,
like
apparently.
You're like a duck on the pond. Like everything's chill on top, but underneath it's just going 100 miles an hour. Just
100%. Oh man. But Summer, anything that shocked you other than wistful?
Apparently, I was sad this whole year. Like I was just super sad. So that was.
It's been a rough couple of years. So
it's true.
Right until the last couple months, then the happiness really came back in. So
that's where you had confident. It was mostly wistful and then confident. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I guess it was so weird because you showed the picture of your aura, Kevin, and I also had a lot of blue in mine. So I just
green.
How diverse that was.
Yeah.
Because mine's more.
What was your other color though?
I have
purple and red.
Purple. Oh wow, yeah. Interesting.
Orange. What would yours look like, Trace?
Well, I feel like a liar now because I said I don't use Spotify, but then I was like, it was like I think it was after I moved back to Lubbock. So it was like within the last couple of months, I was reminded that you can use Spotify, the free version.
Yeah.
And so I had listened to it a few times since then. And so I got on here. And I don't see an aura though. I don't know about this aura thing, but it did say I listened to I'm surprised how much it was only 438 minutes, but I feel like that's quite a bit for
just getting back into it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
you don't get an aura unless you've been on there 500 minutes.
Exactly. And
there's a gateway for how much. Oh man.
And then the artist, it was it's Jason Isbell, who's one of my favorites. And then it's this guy, Drew Kennedy, who I saw play here at Blue Light a couple weeks ago. I'd never heard before. I'd heard of him, but never heard him. And I was like, oh, this guy's great. And so everyone's like, oh, you should check out all his music. So I went to Spotify. And so it was, right now, I think that he's like my favorite artist. Just 'cause that's,
it's making a lot of snap assumptions about you based on 2 months of,
And then third was Kid Cudi, who also I like Kid Cudi, but I must have just was I'm in a hip hop mood and just put on Kid Cudi channel or something. But I was surprised by how many minutes it said I had done in just a couple.
So this then is kind of a micro showing of that thing that we always talk about with what your digital persona looks like based on your usage, and how the longer that you've been involved with something continuously in the digital space, the clearer a picture they have of you and the clearer your online avatar is. And so and this that goes to the conversation that Brian was having, which is hey, look, if you turn all this stuff off and the internet only has a very small window through which to view you, how do they know what might actually how can they feed you stuff that might potentially be of value to you? Whereas if you are a bit more trusting and you've let or you're in advertising, so I'm always I'll answer the YouTube poll. I will allow tracking in these certain instances when the app is open, because, I want to see if there is value in it. And I want to see how things get targeted to me based on that digital footprint that they now have of me. And it's to a point where does every company probably have all of my information? And if the machines take over, am I probably the first to go? Yeah, sure. But I can kind of see the value in it. So I think it's interesting that we can even see a version of that in someone who's had the paid version of Spotify for a decade, and and then someone who has just gotten back with Spotify, the free version, for 2 months. And that's just a little tiny little science experiment, little experiment in big data.
Well, and it's interesting to think about too. I mean, if you're a small business owner or an entrepreneur or a service provider, and you're looking for traffic, or you're looking for people to come to your business, but you're one of those people who opts out of everything. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
gotta think about that. You're asking people to come to your establishment. You want people to interact with you, but you don't interact, you know? So it's a very interesting thing to think about.
Yeah. I had a very crazy not meta Facebook, but meta as in like, you know, like it was very telling in and of itself, for like a weird, it's like the weird millennial, like the elder millennials and those millennials that are becoming a little older now have this weird gap between still wanting to engage, but not wanting to be, you know, subject to basically the digital footprint. And I was at a restaurant and they had an Instagram ticker up on top of their bar, like above their tap handles, and it was set at 0. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Is that like is that actually connected to your Wi-Fi so that every time somebody likes you on Instagram, that ticker goes up physically in real time? They're like, yeah, it was really, really cool. But then we realized that none of our owners and nobody that works for us wanted to actually connect their Facebook to it, because nobody uses Facebook anymore, and nobody wanted to resurrect their old Facebook profile in order to make the Instagram ticker work. And I was like, wow, like that disconnect between like it would have been so easy for someone to just like restart their Facebook so that they had that really interesting, you know, just piece of, you know, like tradigital. We talk about tradigital, right? Traditional and digital, you know, bridge together experience. And it was pretty cool. And I was like, man, that's a bummer that like that you as a millennial got in the way of yourself that in that way. And like you have so many more people that are like that now. But I thought that was the goofiest representation of millennials having to figure out how much they want to participate in the next generation of social and digital. And that was just like a really on the nose event that like showed that to me. It was crazy.
That could be a really good topic for Life of the Brand.
Yeah,
is the tracking and all that stuff, because here's the fact of the matter is this whole opt out of the tracking and all that stuff, it's for show. I mean, they already have all your stuff. They're tracking you in so many different ways.
Just because you opt out of one doesn't mean it all goes away.
Yeah. And so here's the brutal truth is this whole thing is just to make yourself feel good. Okay. It's really not anything that's going to change the outcome of something. Everybody talks about how much data a platform has of your information. Well, if you don't want them to have any information, don't use the platform.
Yeah.
Like it's that simple. Otherwise, deal with it and be advertised the things that are most attractive to you or relevant to you in your situation, and move on with life. I mean, these big businesses aren't the ones that are stealing your data. They're not the ones that are doing bad things with them. Okay, it's the hackers and these, you know, all these dark web people. They're the ones that are doing the bad things with them. These other companies are just trying to give you something that is relevant to you.
Yeah, there's so many conspiracy theorists that would just be like, no, and then we'd be talking for like 7 more hours.
I was gonna say, besides Facebook, I will still say Facebook does terrible things with the data you give them. But everyone else, yeah, you're more. Well,
granted.
Yeah, Facebook's pretty messed up.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's not Apple, it's not Safari, it's not the Fubo TV, it's not, my goodness, just. Every app does are we allowed to track you?
Well, track you.
I mean, yes, because otherwise I'm going to receive Pedialyte advertisements or anything else. And, instead of I'm just going to leave it like that.
Well, it's this
you want to get
idea.
Me on a soapbox for a podcast, get that one started.
It's like you
to the next Life of the Brand.
Exactly. So next Wednesday, Life of the Brand, Brian rants. But it's either like accept all or nothing. Like you are perfectly, entitled to disconnect, right? But there you have too many people that are like, well, I really like what one part of this online experience does for me, whether socially or emotionally or athletically, or I like what this presents, but I don't like what it means from like a broadly ethical perspective, right? Like of the gathering of information, and everybody always jumps all the way to the end of like, your information being gathered and spread out and given to people that will then, that will directly affect you negatively, because it's easy to just jump all the way there. But it's like either connect or don't, like either accept that it is kind of a give and take, or just don't connect, and it's fine if you don't. But if you do connect, then then just go for it and understand that like you're in a digital world. You can let this affect the way that the way that you interact with people in the internet negatively, or you can just do it, and you can try to not be as cynical as maybe everybody online wants you to be.
Or
I don't know.
A third option is if you want to connect but don't like your options, then you create your own, right? I mean, there have been a bunch of different like little tiny platforms that have cropped up since, Facebook. A lot of people wanting their own community that doesn't have XYZ attached to it. So that's always an option too. If you're super passionate about it, then, forge your own little
connect your own, or take the time to research where something like that has been created for
and
you to specifically interact there. And so it's like,
just start the platform and then let Facebook buy you out.
Exactly.
Boom. And your platform's part of the metaverse and you're a few $1 million richer.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But it's, allowing the opportunity for the internet experience to be tailored to exactly what you participate in or want it to be. I feel like the people who argue this point are the ones that hate the internet because they haven't tailored the internet experience to something that's conducive to them. When I get on the internet, I know the different areas that I'm going to. I know what I'm looking for. I'm being notified by the things that I want to be notified. I mean, I just got a notification right now that California has our first Omicron variant confirmed case. Though that's something that I'm following very closely because it's something that affects a lot of our businesses. Mm-hmm. And so, I want a tailored experience to deliver the information, the news, and the content that I want it to deliver to me. And I'm blocking out the other things that I don't want to be a participant in.
You just have to be intentional.
Telling it. Yeah. Like, just be smart about it. Stop bitching. Sorry. Stop complaining about everything and just control your experiences. Being
proactive about it, making sure that you are taking those steps to, again, filter what you want, accept what you do want, and, just let yourself be as ingrained in that world as you want to be, but understand that there's give and take there and that it can be tailored effectively.
But I feel like I'm turning into that grouchy old man. I'm turning into my dad about the internet.
Well, we're all coming from a perspective of people who are media literate, though. Like, this is literally what we studied, it's what we do for a living. And so it can be easy for us to be like, well, just mute those things or just change those. But like, my dad, for example, I have to go in and show him how to do every single one of, like, if he doesn't want certain people popping up on his Facebook because they're sharing like crazy stuff, I have to go in and basically do it for him because he just doesn't have the media literacy that we have. And then even millennials and Gen Zers are just kind of having it because it's how we grew up,
kind of born with.
But I do think that's a soapbox I've had for a while, is that I think we should be teaching media literacy in schools at a very young age so people can discern what is truth and what is false and how we can. But it can also lead to the other way, where we create a bubble where we don't know exactly what's going on with, like, other perspectives and things. So it can have its negatives too. But I do think, like, it's frustrating to us. Like, I'm like, just do this, just do that. But then sometimes I have to take a step back and be like, not everyone knows how to do that.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where we're headed. And it kind of, I mean, like, I know we're running out of time, but like, Kevin, we were talking about it earlier this week in terms of like this whole Web3 situation where now the internet is sort of becoming, like everybody's super about ownership and transparency and literacy. Like these are becoming like things that are at the very forefront of what the internet is headed towards. And even
like
in the
NFTs
meeting that
and
we had, yesterday with when we were watching the masterclass, like how it's this, we didn't have a lot of information and then information was kind of kept hidden. And then now it's just not the case anymore. Like people are smarter, people are doing their research, and the status quo doesn't work anymore. So it's very fascinating to see what the next 5 years even is going to mean.
So the importance is not going to be like combating the idea of an internet that knows a lot about you. It's educating on how you can live comfortably within that. And so I think it's going to be, you're right, that status quo is starting to shift, and that's going to become important to basically bridge that gap, and make sure that like conspiracy theories, aside, like if you think about the probable, the probable outcomes of you allowing versions of yourself to exist online when it is well taken care of and when you are literate as to how to curate that, I think that's going to hopefully be kind of where we want to push people towards next, into interacting online, especially as more elements of Web 3.0 continue to develop, whether that's on an Oculus headset or just in other ways like we've been talking about here today. So I think to
kind of contradict myself a little bit, it's also very scary when you have kids that are growing up in this era. And you're having like, to Trace's point, we have to work, and luckily for us, Chelsea and I are very literate when it comes to this stuff because we're in it, but we're able to educate our son in that direction so that he understands it, knows it. But there's a lot of oversight that needs to take place on that. So here I am saying, just allow all the tracking and use this and everything else. But at the same time, you do open yourself up to a lot of opportunity for negative impacting when it comes to the internet. And how do you protect your children from that? And at what point do you just teach them enough and hope that they get it and move on with life? But it's a terrifying time. I think we ought to get rid of the internet and go back to writing letters and sending out Christmas newsletters and everything else instead postcards. Of Facebook. Yeah. And, my mom asked me the other day, do you want to write a little snippet to put in the family newsletter, Christmas newsletter? And I was like, Mom, everybody has Facebook. Why are we writing this Christmas? And she's like, well, now that you mention it, I only got one last year. And I'm like, yeah, because nobody's doing it anymore. But
well, my dad, and you gotta do it differently. We always talk about like break through the noise, and if you want to utilize a platform, like an old school newsletter, like do it different. My dad still writes one every year, but every year he rewrites the night before Christmas, because he's just that kind of person to where he just rewrites the night before Christmas and has it talk in rhyme, in cadence about like the year our family all had. And it's hysterical. It's fantastic. It's like, that's something you ain't getting on Facebook. That's something you'll get. He rewrote the words to 5 songs from Les Miserables so that they could sing it at my rehearsal dinner. Like, it was ridiculous. My dad is your
father, but he is now my favorite person.
He is an absurd human being and like my favorite person. Like, it's so funny, but like, that's the kind of creativity you have to enter stuff with. If somebody's saying like, man, we need to go back to a world where we're just giving people information through like, heartfelt, more emotionally driven ways. Like, I want to send a newsletter, I want to send a postcard. You got to think creatively about it, which, to bring it back around, that's what Spotify has done. They figured out the creative way, the kind of empathetic way to present, to utilize the information they have on people and present it back to them in a way that helps their brand rather than hurts. And so that's why we wanted to kind of come on here and talk about it. And so,
way to go, Kevin.
Yeah,
I know.
wrapping it all back around. You're
That
welcome.
was
You're really showing your
that was a-
aura right now with that.
Yeah,
But
That was
was some-
very turquoise of me.
yeah.
that was some good tap dancing.
Perfect. Nailed it. Well, thanks guys for jumping on. Thanks for the conversation. A lot of fun as always. And thanks everyone for listening. Again, Break Room is every other Wednesday, 2 p.m. Central Time, 1 p.m. Mountain, and then every other Wednesday on the off weeks, we have another podcast that we present called Life of the Brand, and that's usually a little bit shorter form, a little more focused on a single topic or a single idea. Check that out wherever you listen to podcasts, and the Break Room is also post-produced wherever you listen to podcasts as well. And thanks for listening, and everybody get back to work.